CX-50 and Forester are standout options in a segment full of competent blobs. However, in the last 5 years, they've fallen behind when it comes to efficiency. Not anymore. Subaru and Mazda finally build regular, affordable hybrids. Well, that was until tariffs bumped the price of the Forester. The Subaru starts at $38,000, and the Mazda at the moment begins at $35,000 here in the US. Briefly, if you enjoy fun, detailed car content, consider subscribing and hitting the notification bell. If the channel hits 100,000 subs before 2026, I'll make another expensive special series. Thank you. And thank you to the great people over at Royal on the Eastside and Royal South Mazda in Bloomington, Indiana, for letting me put these cars head to head today. If you're in the market, check them out. In order to build their hybrid, Subaru did peek at Toyota's homework, but then they built their own setup. It does not compromise in any way on what is important to Subaru as a brand. Whereas Mazda used more of their money than motivation. They paid Toyota for their now previous gen hybrid RAV4 powertrain, and then they modified the CX-50 to accommodate it. It sits about 2 inches higher than a regular CX-50, despite actually having a little bit less ground clearance. They had to sacrifice some of the packaging, but the good news is that in person, it's pretty hard to tell. I'm still a sucker for its sharp lines and wide hips. To me, it's a lot more distinct than the new Forester. Let me know your thoughts. The Subaru is at least clean and inoffensive. The boxy body also lends it some big advantages on the inside. It's going to have more ground clearance than the Mazda, and you can get a few more features too, like a 360 view camera, a heated steering wheel, heated rear seats. Outside of those things, these are equipped pretty similarly. However, they feel entirely different. In the Forester, the seating position is higher than that of the CX-50, making for easier entry. The dashboard and console are much lower, so it feels larger in here. The materials are soft touch where you would want them to be. They accent here and there with some suede, and for the limited trim you get some wood. I'd say this interior feels durable, but it doesn't feel like $42,000. For more luxury, you can go up to the Touring, but now we're talking an uncomfortable amount of money for a compact crossover. Still, there is much to appreciate here, like the soft and supportive seats, the standard panoramic sunroof that actually opens up pretty far, and this highly configurable, crisp digital gauge cluster. It's almost funny how good this display is when you think about how bad this one is. It looks and reacts like a 10-year-old touchscreen. It embeds many key functions. At least they do give you physical inputs for your temperature, defrosters, and volume and tune, but I still think this is the low point of the interior. Hopefully Subaru updates the Forester with their new infotainment as soon as they can. I think a lot of people will be able to overlook the tech when they look at the back seat. At 6'3", I can fit behind myself with no issues, and the cargo capacity is immense. It's exceptionally wide and tall, the seats fold pretty flat, though Subaru got rid of the spare tire to make space for the battery. Mazda did not make that sacrifice. The CX-50 is down on cargo height and width compared to the Forester. It's not as furniture friendly, but it is long, and I found the dimensions to be identical to the non-hybrid. However, you are going to lose an inch or two in backseat legroom. I'm 6'3" and I can still fit. This should work for a lot of small families, but it feels similar to a Toyota Corolla for me. If you have large reverse-facing child seats, or if you want your rear seat passengers to have some breathing room, the Forester is much better. At least each of them will give you rear console vents. Up front, you not only have clicky buttons and dials to control the dual zone HVAC, you can also use physical inputs to control your infotainment, which is reactive and very easy to use in motion, especially if you're switching between navigation and music while in CarPlay. It can function as a touchscreen as well, but only in Apple CarPlay or Android Auto. Mazda's also been doing a good job with quality. The panel fitment here is tight. The materials, while more plasticky than some other Mazdas, look upscale. The layout is unique in this segment. but it is more polarizing. The belt line is so much higher here than it is with the Forester. Not to the point where it's necessarily hard to see out of, but you definitely feel like you're in a tall car versus a utility-focused SUV. The infotainment could also take some getting used to. The seats are a bit firm. And again, I wish that Mazda offered some of the features that we could get with the turbocharged model. That all said, this is undoubtedly a more premium experience than what you get with the Forester for less money. This one is $39,000. Oh, and it comes with one of the best sound systems in the class with this Bose unit. I found it to be more clear at high volumes than the Subaru's Harman Kardon unit. And you can get this with a beautiful red interior if you must. The CX-50 Hybrid is a mixed bag on the road because it's adhering to two sets of principles. On one hand, it has a firm ride and handles like a Mazda. And on the other, you have the most pragmatic powertrain that Toyota builds. 38 miles per gallon will save you money. 219 horsepower will give you lively passing power. And the ECVT will serenade you with the sound of Toyota's 2.5 liter. While I would prefer Mazda's 6-speed automatic for more direct response to my inputs, the ECVT is the smartest transmission you can buy in a commuter. In this case, it uses an embedded electric motor to help drive the front wheels, and then a separate motor to start the engine and change the ratios. This means that you do have an electric response that creates a linear feeling. It reacts in a timely manner. It's been a much more reliable design, and I think most people will prefer how this feels compared to a regular CVT. The top priority of this design is efficiency, which is how it achieves 38 miles per gallon with all-wheel drive. Just like its Toyota half-brother, there's no center drive shaft, only a 54 horsepower motor powering the rear axle. While it's not for climbing over big obstacles, that's enough to help on snowy roads or mild trails with its off-road mode. If you're after speed, the CX-50 Hybrid is a noticeable step up over the regular CX-50. Definitely a far cry from the turbocharged models. I think this is going to leave most people quite satisfied. 0 to 60 for me came up in about 7.7 seconds. Mazda is first and foremost known for building engaging products, and the way that this puts the power down is just very sterile. It just feels like it's trying to be effective and nothing else, which I suppose for most hybrid crossover buyers isn't a big deal. At least Mazda did not give up their handling chops. Yes, this is heavier than the regular CX-50. It sits up a little bit higher, though I think that slight loss in poise will hardly be noticeable to most people, especially if you're not driving it at higher speeds. At most back roads, what I really find myself appreciating is the steering. It's super predictable. I think it is well weighted, maybe a tad heavy for some people's taste in this segment, but to me, it's precise, it's confident. I'm getting some feedback from the road. Body roll is limited for the segment, and despite having a torsion beam rear suspension, even if the road is uneven, it handles its mass well. Once you start hitting one bump after another, you notice some jitteriness. It's not going to be quite as smooth as some of the competitors you'll find in this class. It's also not going to be quite as forgiving as a lot of them. Yet I think over most pavement, crossover buyers will find the CX-50 to be tolerable. Same goes for the noise levels. Cruising around highway speeds, it's not that loud, but cruising around a busy highway, you might hope for just a little bit more visibility. On the road, the Subaru Forester is more approachable. You can see everything. The steering is light and precise, and because this now uses an ECVT2, the power delivery, especially from a stop, is very predictable. I definitely prefer this powertrain over the regular Forester before we even get to its efficiency advantage. Subaru says that this can manage 35 miles per gallon combined, which does put it behind the CX-50. It's also down on power. Total output is 194 ponies, but those are Subaru ponies because this uses a 2.5 liter Boxer 4. It's still longitudinally mounted and it's still a full-time all-wheel drive setup. According to Edmunds, this was about 0.4 of a second quicker to 60 than the regular car, still putting it behind what the Mazda can manage. Do you care about flat-out acceleration numbers here? Probably not. At least passing power is sufficient. The electric torque makes this feel more responsive than the regular car. The power builds up in a linear fashion. I know I keep saying that word today, but that's really the biggest difference that you're going to find here over the regular Forester powertrain. And because this has a more capable all-wheel drive system, better clearance, and an additional off-road mode, the Forester is more tuned for remote travel than the Mazda. But the trade-off is the efficiency advantage. The Subaru Hybrid adds 6 miles per gallon combined over its non-electrified kin, whereas the CX-50 jumps 10. Through city streets or corners, the Forester doesn't disappoint. While this handles softer than the CX-50 Hybrid, the turning circle here is nice and tight. I think a lot of people are going to find the steering to be easy. There's not much heft to it, yet there's just a cough of feedback pumped through the wheel, resulting in a car that is more confident than it was before. Even if this does take the L when it comes to fun compared to the CX-50, this still handles pretty well. Maybe you could partially attribute that to the lower center of gravity, not only from the battery pack, but also that flat Boxer engine. And because that center of gravity isn't too high, they don't need to spring this as stiff as they do the CX-50, so you're gonna notice the biggest difference on a road like this. It's more smooth, it's more forgiving, it also has independent rear suspension. I think roads like these would be less fatiguing in the long run. If my local government couldn't care less about the roads around me, this would be the car I'd choose, though this does have Subaru's EyeSight systems, which they've gotten better, but the lane departure prevention does have a hard time noticing when I'm doing something on purpose to, say, avoid a bunch of potholes or a big puddle, and it will alert me every time. I can shut that off, but it'll leave a warning in the gauge cluster, which bothers me personally. Though the advantage to this over the CX-50 Hybrid is that the Mazda, at least when it's electrified, cannot be had with any form of lane centering, just the lane departure prevention. So when you're cruising up on the highway, the Subaru might be a little bit easier to eat up miles in. Noise levels, according to my sound meter, are identical to what you would get with the Mazda, but to my ears, I think I'm hearing a little bit more of the wind here in the Subi. One advantage to Mazda taking a previous gen Toyota hybrid system is that they took a previous gen Toyota hybrid system. The powertrain is built to outlast you, albeit the battery might become a concern after 15 years. Now, at least the Subaru's engine has had some time to work out its issues, and the basic eCVT design is robust. But the Forester is hot off of a redesign, and the brand has yet to produce a mass-market hybrid. So, time will tell all. To the person who cares about reliability above anything else, we know that what's underneath the hood of the CX-50 has treated Toyota owners pretty well, with the exception of a wiring harness issue for a lot of Canadian folks. Safety-wise, the Mazda is also going to perform a little bit better for rear seat passengers than the Forester. Both are top safety picks. When the CX-50 Hybrid initially debuted, it looked like the best of both worlds. You get Toyota reliability with Mazda fun. What could be better? And then I drove it, and I realized that the Toyota side of things did suck away some of the soul from the CX-50, and there were slight compromises in packaging too. However, driving it back-to-back with this Subaru Forester Hybrid reminds me that Mazda, even when they're phoning in a powertrain, can still build a car with more personality than most other manufacturers on their best day. It still handles well, it looks distinct, the interior quality is good, the controls are well thought out. I still believe it would be a more complete package if Mazda did the powertrain work, but in this day and age, I can't complain that much for what you get, especially under $40,000. It almost ends up making the Subaru Forester feel harder to justify. Ultimately, the Subi is the more sensible car. Even though it does have less power and doesn't get quite as many MPGs, it's noticeably more comfortable on a bad road. You can get more features if you're willing to spend more money. Backseat passengers will have space to stretch out, and the cargo capacity is next level. It does all of the crossover things very well, just like the regular Forester, and they didn't have to compromise their values to make this either. I really admire the effort that Subaru put into this. The hybrid Forester is the best Forester because it fixes every powertrain qualm that I had with the non-electrified model, with the only small compromise being the loss of a spare tire. I think Subaru fans and families with high demands will be happy with this. Yet the lower price, added efficiency, and extra power make the Toyota-Mazda collab more enticing to the frugal-minded. So if you don't need maximum versatility or comfort, I'd say the CX-50 Hybrid walks away as the winner. Maybe that's the childless YouTuber in me speaking, but I'll leave it there today. Thanks for watching, and thank you to my channel members for helping me improve my content. For additional videos, consider joining. I'll catch you in the next one.